Well, hello. Welcome to class. It's LDR813, and we're going to be looking at the Week 3 assignments. First of all, of course, we have to explore our leadership cartoon of the week, and I apologize. Some of you may have seen some of this material before and seen the cartoons before, but I'm a believer in good quality can stand a second viewing. So here we have Dilbert and his boss, and his boss says, "I've been reading a great book about management and the rules for leadership." Dilbert says, "Well, allow me to put that into context. There are probably 10,000 books about leadership. Each one has a different approach, and there's millions of real leaders, of which two are alike. Moreover, every situation is unique and requires a different type of leader, and yet this one author has found a magic formula to transform you from a gullible baboon into a great leader. And, of course, that makes sense because all great leaders throughout history achieved leadership by reading a random book." After all this, boss says, "I really don't like context that much." "No, context isn't that popular," says Dilbert. And after taking a few leadership classes and starting to explore all the variations of leadership thinking and approaches, you may begin to feel the same way. However, this week we're going to continue our exploration of transformational and transactional leadership. And I would like to focus kind of on the transactional side because many times that gets overlooked in favor of transformational, and many times transactional is categorized as the bad leadership boss who punishes and rewards for performance and doesn't inspire. But it's not really true. I mean, it's transactional leadership comes out of social exchange theory, and it's the way that a lot of things get done. After all, people have to live according to a set of policies, and they have to be punished if they violate the policies, and no matter how inspired they may be, they still need to get paid for their work, and they need to get rewarded for better performance. So transactional behavior, transactional leadership, and social exchange is really one of the ways that things get done in our society. So we can't really sort of say it's not effective and it doesn't do anything, because it does a lot, and it's pretty much an essential way of conducting business in large organizations. Okay, so we're going to be looking at additionally at transformational leadership, but investigating more of what's called transactional leadership style. Now, the Week 3 assignment is both a discussion post regarding transactional and transformational leadership, as you might expect, and the paper does the same thing. Basically, you're going to be writing an 8 to 10 page paper where you discuss the history and the theoretical developments in the theories. The readings that have been provided are just the crack of the door to see what's inside this tremendous pile of articles that have been compiled over the past 30 years. So the issue, and I'll address this more as we get into the lecture and also in future classes, the issue isn't finding articles on a particular leadership style. There are many, many articles in many, many different journals. The issue is how you find something that is going to make sense as you try to promote a particular viewpoint or try to analyze a specific aspect of it. Simply putting a big pile of literature on your reference list and saying, here's all the articles I could find, about transformational leadership, that list would be, 1 million articles long. So the issue is not so much finding things as finding the things that you want to use that make sense and contribute to your argument you're making for your thesis statement. Okay. So the paper is going to deal with these two leadership styles from the perspective of leadership style theory, and how styles are based upon leadership behaviors that are observable, and how we tend to put people into various categories according to the way we see them behaving. All right. So that's kind of the essence of the theoretical background. But of course, as we know, when you're talking about academics, that's not simple enough. There you have to really get it much more defined, researched. Studies have to be set up, information has to be gathered and analyzed, and so it becomes a much more complicated process than you might think at first. Okay, so the paper's due on Sunday. It's 8 to 10 pages. That's the body of the paper. The title page is extra. The reference page is extra. So 8 to 10 pages of the body. And if you again have questions about what I'm looking for, go back and look at the week 2 video where I talk about the rubric or the guidelines that I want you to follow as you're writing your paper. But also I want to put this in the context of where you go towards developing your research topic for your dissertation. And I've said it before, and I'll probably say it many times. You'll hear it many times again. Everything we're doing is related to your dissertation. There's nothing that I put in my classes that can't be related directly to something you're going to need to do on your dissertation. And so maybe it's a good idea to kind of review, so what's the dissertation process? How does this all happen? So putting the whole thing together, I have what I call the TSLG model, two-stream literature gap model. And the process starts with developing a stream of literature out of a body of literature. I know some of you have seen this before, and it's sort of like always going to talk about it again. But for those of you who haven't, this is a good time in your concentration to sort of say, well, how exactly is all this fit together? Well, what I'm doing now, how does that fit into what I'm going to do on my dissertation? So the dissertation process starts from a stream of literature, okay? And then usually that'll come out of your concentration. So if you're all in leadership, so your stream of literature is going to come out of the body of literature. Then you'll need a second stream of literature, and that could come from psychology, or it could come from marketing, it could come from any variety of areas. But you're going to be combining two theoretical bases to form you're going to synthesize the streams with the ideas. You're going to try to find a way to take the two streams and build a bridge across them that says, if we use the theoretical concepts from one area, from one body of literature, and we combine it, synthesize it with the theoretical constructs from the second area, we end up with something new, kind of like making a new dish in the kitchen. You have all these ingredients, but you're going to put them together in a new way, and you're going to end up with a new dish. Well, that's kind of what you're doing here. You have all the ingredients from the bodies of literature that we've been studying. You're going to pull two of those out and start mixing them together to come up with a new theory or a new idea, new research topic. That's called the bridge and the gap. And I often use the example of Michael Porter in the strategic management field, who was taking his classes at Harvard while working on his PhD, and he was taking some classes in the economics school over on the Boston side of the Charles River, and other classes he was taking at the Harvard Business School on the Cambridge side of the river. And running back and forth, he realized that both of these schools, the economics school and the business school, were really working towards the same goal. And so he saw that if you looked at IO economics from a business policy standpoint, and you looked at business policy from an IO economic standpoint, there was clearly a gap there, and his five forces theory and his generic strategies theory was the bridge that brought these two together and became the basis of hundreds and hundreds of peer-reviewed journal articles that Porter produced, many books, and kind of launched him into the rock star status among academics currently alive and still publishing. So that's what we're trying to do, maybe not on the stature of Michael Porter, but we're trying to understand these bodies of literature so we can identify a stream out of that, pull the literature together, boil it down, get to clear definition of terms, and then try to combine it together, synthesize it together, so that you can say, this is what my research is about. I'm going to show that these two things combined together provide a better understanding of behavior or better understanding of leadership than they do independently. So I'm going to add to the literature. That's called the prospectus stage. And at that point, once that's approved by your advisor, then you have a committee or a panel assigned. That's some additional faculty members, and you start to work on your research questions and your hypotheses. Okay. And then that leads to designing your data collection method, whether you're going to be using surveys or experiments or observations, whatever you're going to be doing. And then that gets sent to back up a second. Then that's called your proposal. That's the first 3 chapters. Then introduction, literature review, and methodology. That gets presented to a audience of faculty, administration, and students in what's called the proposal defense. Once the proposal defense is approved, Then the information is sent to the Institutional Review Board to get approval for the type of data collection you're going to be doing. Once that approval is gained, then you actually start sending out your questionnaires, interviewing people, running your experiments, and collecting the data that's going to prove that the gap and the bridge that you defined back in the prospectus stage, that they are actually valid, that they're true. Or you disprove them because your hypotheses are all rejected. Then you're going to take the statistical results, you're going to report those findings, and then finally you're going to translate all that back into English and summarize the results and explain how your research is added to the theoretical basis of the bodies of literature that you started with, and how they also contribute to a better understanding of leadership in the field in management, in practicing management. When that's all finished, then you do a final defense, again similar to the proposal defense. You do a presentation to administration, faculty, and students. And if that's all approved, then you're finished. Then you've completed your dissertation. There's a few more extra paperwork steps, but essentially that's it. So what we're talking about here is really understanding these streams of literature. And streams of literature are not the body of literature related to just leadership or even transformational leadership, because there's millions of articles of literature related to that. You've got to start to boil it down, and that's what we'll be doing in this class, trying to identify a stream of literature and create a stream that leads to the support for a particular point that you want to make. That's why I say you got to start with a thesis statement of what you're trying to do in your paper. So then the literature that you add is really creating the argument that this is a valid thing that you're trying to do, that there's literature that says, yes, this is the right way to do it. I've also mentioned before Bloom's taxonomy of learning, and I think this is appropriate at this point also, because sometimes students get the impression that when I ask for an analysis of transformational and transactional leadership, what I'm really asking them is to define those theories and write an explanation of what those theories are. Well, that's not really it. That's shows the first level that you read and you understand and you can recall, so you're knowledgeable about it. But simply repeating what's been said in the articles is the first level. Okay, so I'm not really looking for a book review or an article review or even a theory review. What I'm looking for is a higher level of combining the main ideas from the different literature, combining them to make something new, to come up with a new idea. So let's work our way up there. Next level is comprehension. Okay, here you have to be able to discuss, you have to be able to understand and summarize. And that's what we do in our discussion posts. Okay, we're discussing things, which requires more than simply saying this is what this article said, to interpreting it and saying this is how I think it relates to the other articles that we've read, or even to what I've read in other classes. Okay, then we move up the triangle to application, where now you can see how it works with regards to solving particular problems, and perhaps you can apply it to your own environment at work or the military or whatever you can identify with, or maybe the political campaigns that are going on. Higher level is analysis. There you start looking for patterns. Synthesis is what I've been talking about today, is how you combine previous ideas that have been accepted and proven, but you combine them together and you end up with a new idea. Kind of like doing the new recipe in the kitchen. And finally, evaluation is when you've been able to do all this and you are in a position where you can actually assess things and say, I don't agree with this theory. Here's the reasons why, and expect people who know something about that theory to take your opinion seriously. But clearly, none of us are at that point right now. When Bass or one of the identified authentic authorities in the field says something, people tend to stand up and listen because the person has proven that they're pretty knowledgeable about what they're talking about. We have to prove what we're talking about based upon the literature that exists that shows what we're talking about has been validated by other people, the experts. Okay, so that's how that fits into what we're doing and also into the dissertation process. So the keys to success for this week are, of course, when you're writing, get started early. They say that good writing is 10% creativity and 90% revision. Well, all that revision and proofreading, editing, and rewrites takes time. Okay, so you have to get your rough draft done way early so that you can spend some time going over it. You may find that you don't have enough information, or when you reread it, it doesn't really make sense. Okay, you can't start on Sunday evening at 6 o'clock and write a 10-page paper of any quality by the deadline. So start early. I expect you to use additional references. Just using the required readings is a good starting point, but it's only a little bit of information about a very big topic. So once you decide exactly what your thesis is, what angle you're going to take on this research, on this particular topic, then you're going to look for things that relate to that specific objective, relate to that specific thesis that you're trying to show or prove. Don't simply review the articles. I think I've made my point on the previous slide. Okay, I'm not looking for an article review or a description or explanation of the theory. Okay, I want you to take the main ideas out of the papers, what the authors are trying to say about it, okay, and then combine them with the other ingredients from the other articles. Okay, every paper has a slightly different perspective that they're trying to take and a slightly different point they're trying to prove. Okay, your job is to find those main points and then weave them together into the story you want to tell. And that will represent and demonstrate your own analysis and your own thinking, your creativity. If this kind of is sounding familiar, well, it was exactly what I talked about when I explained the paper rubric or guidelines in the Week 2 presentation, where I explained these are the things when I look at a paper, this is what I look at, and this is what I'll be referring to when I make comments on your papers and grade your papers. So you might as well use that as the guide as you're writing the paper, because that's what I'm looking for when I grade the paper. So when everything is all said and done, you should be able to read that paper and say, this is good. I think I'm doing the right thing, and I should get a good grade on my paper. So with that, I think I'll leave you, and you know how to get in touch with me if you have any questions. We're kind of moving along, and as so far the discussions have been excellent, I think. We're covering a lot of ground. The readings are being well represented. Everybody needs to make kind of an effort, though, to stay involved and answer any questions and kind of push the topic forward. Okay, simply reviewing what's in the articles is one thing, but like I said, that won't get you down that stream of literature to be able to develop the gap. So if you find difficulty doing that, this is the time to start working on that. So until next time, goodbye and good luck.